Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker Betting Show. I'm your host George Elek and I'm joined by Oddschecker's very own tipster Andy Holding as we look ahead to the third day of the July Festival at Newmarket on the July course. The Saturday's racing, a cracking day of racing as well. We're recording this just after midday on Thursday, so the action is about to get started at Newmarket, so we have to get through this quickly so Andy can get watching, or we can both get watching the racing for what should be a cracking afternoon. But we're going to get straight into it. We've already recorded Thursday and Friday shows, so if you're watching this before Friday's racing, do check out the Oddschecker YouTube channel where you can find our Friday preview. And before we get into the racing now as well, just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker app. Download the app now for best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and Andy's tips as well as other tipsters straight to the app every single day across all sports as well. So do download the Oddschecker app now. If you're watching this podcast or listening to, so if you're watching this video or listening to this podcast, it must be because you like a bet. So you'd be mad not to download it. Andy, the first, we've given a bit of lip service to the first couple of maidens on Thursday and Friday. I think here, 6 runners, one of them's run once without much credit. I think we can just skip this one. Neither of us know much about any of the unraced horses. Plenty of big names in there. The running line, of course, a roaring line. Colt is in there, a balding horse, a Becker horse. I'm sure there'll be some nice sorts in there, but we're not going to bother previewing a race that we know very little about. So we'll go straight on to the 205.
Yep.
As I say, recording this just after midday on Thursday, so final decks only just out, embryonic prices as it stands. So these could date pretty quickly, but we'll do our best. And kicking off with the 7 furlong Fillies Handicap, the 205, where Kidwah is the 7-4 favourite ahead of Truly Acclaimed at 9-2. Golden Spice 11-2. Miss Carol Ann, the same price, 11-2. Silken Petals 8-1. Victoria Grove 9-1. Tadita Twitch 20-1. Alade 33-1. 8 runners as it stands. And Andy, I always quite like doing these pods with you just after final decks and when prices aren't necessarily out, because you haven't necessarily seen them yet. So sometimes you're getting your first view at how the market has kind of reformed after final decks. How does this one look to you?
It's a good betting race, isn't it? 8 runners, you've got a short price favourite, as is always the want in races of this nature when you get a Haggas horse unbeaten. Always massively respected in the market, sometimes overbet. The certain stables from that neck of the woods, which often command a huge amount of respect, probably too much respect, arguably. But there's lots to like the way she won at Redcar. She did what she needed to do. She was 2-9, didn't have a great deal to beat. The time figure wasn't anything out of the ordinary. So it's the kind of thing, well, is 8 out a good mark or a bad mark? Only really those closely associated with the odd will know that. The benchmark horse for me is Golden Spice, having run at Royal Ascot, in that very, very competitive Sandringham handicap for the Fillies. And, she ran respective. I think she finished 10th of the 28 runners, was prominent throughout, and then just paid for it late on, as often front runners do. But I'm sure she'll run a race, as will Silken Petals as well from the Charlie McBride yard. Got beat by Auditor here last time out. That was over 7 furlongs, so stepping up in trip, improved hugely on its previous attempt over 6. Probably needed the run as well first time out, in truth be told. But I do like that course and distance form of that Silken Petals. Not many of these have run at the track. She has. And she's a nice each way price as well, with hopefully the dead 8 runners to go to post. So hopefully that price will hold up come Saturday for Silken Petals.
Silken Petals 8-1 best price with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook, as you say, 3 places as it stands. But remember, if you do, because it's after final decks, if you have your bet now and one does come out, your bet will be changed to reflect that to a 1/4 on then to the handicap over a mile, the Mile Handicap 240, Bay of Honour, the 9-4 favourite ahead of Lasser Dude at 3-1, Jimi Hendrix 4-1, Be Lucky My Son 5-1. Lawful Command 8-1, Positive Impact 12-1, New Kingdom 16, Spin Around 25s. 8 runners again, Andy. Are we going to be able to find ourselves a nice little each way multi?
Yeah, this is the one I'd probably recommend to all the listeners of the podcast for the 3 days. I would say this is my banker of the entire meeting. I talked about the Britannia handicap, didn't I, in fairly glowing terms on the first podcast we did. Or the second one, wasn't it? I've lost track now.
Second,
with Jonafis, who runs in the, I think, the second race on the Friday. I'm hoping he'll go well, even though Stall 12 is a little bit of a bugbear, but already the signs are that Britannia handicap is going to work out really well. The 15th horse claimed the crown, won at Ripon the other day in a good time. But that time figure that was posted by Thesis and Saga, front two there that day, suggested that they are very much group horses in waiting, particularly the second. I mean, he absolutely charged his way through the field, didn't he? I think he was universally accepted as being very unlucky. And he'd run behind Belgium as well the time before, don't forget Saga. So, you know, the collateral of that form of the Britannia is really good. But the horse I want to draw your attention to is the third, Jimi Hendrix, who comes out incredibly well on the figures. And if you take into account as well that he made the running, which is almost impossible to do in any straight track race at Royal Ascot in a big field, you've got to upgrade his run tenfold. He should have dropped out the back of the telly, really. He had all those really good horses, you know, kind of circling around him like vultures inside the last 2 furlongs. And yet he managed to repel all of them, bar Thesis and Saga, who were ridden. If you go back and watch them, they were ridden miles off the pace. I mean, I think Saga was last with 3 furlongs to run. That's normally the run style that wins most of those races at Royal Ascot. You look at Dark Shift when he won the Roland Cup. You look at Rohan when he won the Wokingham. Horses that were way off the speed have come through very strong as the front runners die, and the horses that are finishing hit the line hard. So that run of Jimi Hendrix, I said, was absolutely sensational. His time figure's miles better than anything else that these have achieved so far, including Bay of Honour. Bay of Honour ran to an 86 when he won last time out. Jimi Hendrix ran to a 99 when he was third in the Britannia. The front two ran to 100. So, like I say, pound for pound, that Britannia was the best race of the week. I'm looking to follow it over a cliff. And as I said, with Jimi Hendrix, he's run a massively upgradable one. Then he should be favourite here for me. He's definitely got the best form coming into the race, and yet he's 4-1. So for that reason, that's the reason why I'm really imploring you to have more than a second look at Rafe Beckett's horse.
Jimi Hendrix 4-1. Paddy Power and Betfair Sportsbook, the only 2 firms who are out at the moment. So we'll see how the other firms react. I'll have a quick look back at this race before the end of the show in kind of 15-20 minutes, just to see if anyone else has popped up and see if there are any bigger prices about. But Jimi Hendrix, a strong selection there for Andy in the third race on the card, the Mile Handicap.
Just quickly bear in mind the horses that were down the field as well. They also come out of the race. The Lawful Commando finished 5th. And Spin Around as well. He was drawn really badly. If you look at the race, again, another horse I did a little bit of work on. He was right towards the near side. He had no chance. So, like I say, don't completely rule those out. Especially if you're doing some forecast betting. I'll probably perm the 3 together and hopefully, do okay out of it. But Jimi Hendrix is definitely the pick of the pile.
So time for the 3:15 now, the Superlative Stakes. Victory Dance is the 13-8 favourite, Line of War 5-2, Isaac Shelby 7-2, Dark 30 13-2, and For a Laugh 33-1. 5 runners over 7 furlongs, Andy, and these are the kind of 2-year-old races where I think you really come into your own, because often your speed figures and the way you can analyse these horses that are lightly run is more reflective of what ends up happening to the market, which is the aim of the game, isn't it? So how do you see this?
Well, I wouldn't say we've got an Alfred Munnings on our hands here again, like we did in the Cheshire, where a horse that was odds on after doing absolutely nothing on the clock was presented with us. But we've got Victory Dance, probably more style over substance as it stands at the very moment in time. I did like the way he won at Newmarket. It was a slowly run race and he got the job done. It was more workmanlike than impressive. Probably indicative of the fact they went slow and then it was a sprint. So when you get situations like that, they can look a little bit laboured. I think he will be better in a more stronger run race, which I'm sure this race will be, because we've got Line of War in there. And so far, Line of War has made the running. He's set a good tempo. He's burnt off his rivals and he's won in 2 very fast times, last time out by 10 lengths. So the one with the form on the board with the numbers is Line of War. The one with the most potential coming through that could be better further down the line is Victory Dance. As I look at those 2 now, I'd always prefer to go with the one who's done it and posted it, so I know exactly where I'm at, rather than guess whether the other one can do it. And given that Line of War is the better price of the 2 as well, I'd be going with Mark and Charlie Johnson's 2-year-old on this occasion.
Line of War 5-2 best price. That's with William Hill as short as 15-2 elsewhere. So Hill's really sticking their neck out there and taking on Line of War. But Andy thinks Line of War is the one to be with. On now to the Bunbury Cup over 7 furlongs. 20 runners here in this big field handicap, and Montasib is the 5-1 favourite ahead of Samburu at 6-1, Jumby 15-2, Vafortino 11-1, Star of Orion and Ross Colin both 12-1, Il Bandito 14, Silent Film 18s, Accidental Agent 18s, 20-1 bar those. Andy, where do you think the value is?
Well, I do think the value's with Ropey Guest at 20-1. Based on his run in the Buckingham Palace. The Buckingham Palace is the nearest thing, as damn it, you're going to find to the Bunbury Cup all season long, i.e. a double figure field where they're stretched across the track, where they go a real flat-out gallop, almost guaranteed to be a fast time. And, you know, if you look at pure formula reliability, if you believe in it, then that race should work out similarly to what we saw at Ascot. And I thought Ropey Guest was a worthy second. As is often the case with him, he travelled really well in it. He got himself into the front just over the furlong out. And, you know, he's just got outrun by a stronger finisher in the latter stages. But he has beaten most of today's field, or some of today's field that are shorter than him in the betting, which I think is a little bit disrespectful. And I know you can fancy horses that were a little bit unlucky in the run, like Star of Orion, and obviously people will be looking at the Jersey form with Samburu, etc., etc. But you can't beat good old-fashioned handicap form, you know, in these big field races. And Ropey Guest has got a pile of those under his belt. He also runs his track particularly well. I've noticed he's got placed here a few times. And even though he only finished 8th of the 18 runners in this race last year, he actually beat his side. As it turned out, the high draw last year didn't work out. I think he was drawn on the far side, and they came down the middle towards the near side, and that didn't really help him. Now, obviously, we've got 2 days worth of evidence, and we don't really know whether his stall 17 will work out favourably this year. But at least you get the chance of 2 days to look at it, to weigh it all up, and if his draw isn't too bad on the far side, then you know, you can play him accordingly at 20s. On form, he shouldn't be 20s, and that's the way I'll be approaching this race coming weekend.
Yeah, Ropey Guest 20-1 with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook, who are both 5 places as it stands, but this is early, so I reckon by Saturday you're going to be getting a few more places, maybe 6, maybe even 7 places with a few firms. So shop around on the oddschecker app. This is going to be a very, very quick show because the final race on the card, we don't have any prices. I will ask Andy if there's anyone to look out for, but that means that the last race we're going to be covering in depth is one of the races of the week. You have to say the Darley July Cup over 6 furlongs. Perfect Power is this 9-4 favourite ahead of Artorias at 7-2. Creative Force is 6-1. Naval Crown 13-2. So Naval Crown, despite getting the better of Creative Force at Royal Ascot, still being priced up at a bigger price. Flaming Rib 10-1. Cadamosto 20-1. Romantic Proposal 20-1. Alcohol Free 20-1, 28-1 bar, 14 runners. Andy, for the last race we're going to cover here in detail, but no shortage of quality in this one.
Yeah, an absolute humdinger, isn't it? And a good battle of the ages as well. We've got the 2 big 6 furlong Group 1s represented here, the Commonwealth Cup and of course the Platinum Jubilee. I personally think that the Platinum Jubilee was a much tougher race in the Commonwealth Cup. That's not taking anything away from Perfect Power because he beat his own age group in pretty convincing fashion. But if you look at their respective time figures of what Perfect Power achieved in comparison to the older horse race, there's a good bit between them. Not a massive amount, but enough to think, well, Perfect Power is a bit too short at 9-4, even though I respect him. And if you go back and look at the Platinum Jubilee, I mean, what a humdrum of a race that was. I mean, I think pretty much every 6 furlong horse worth his salt was in that race. I don't think anything was missing as far as I could see. They were in a real strong pace. The time figure was exceptionally good. And I actually took the view that Naval Crown did really well to win it because he was drawn towards the near side. And to my recollection, he was one of the only few horses of the entire week that managed to win up the stand side rail. And if you have a look at how far ahead he beat those horses that were in and around him, it suggested to me that he ran way beyond his actual victory suggested. Whereas all the others, like your Artoriuses and your Creative Forces and your Highfield Princesses of this world, were all drawn where the best horses were, where the pace was. They're all drawn around by the Aussie horse. I can't remember his name now, his favourite. So they got dragged into the heat of the battle, whereas Naval Crown had to row his own boat. he had to do all the donkey work himself. So for that matter, I think the price is all wrong here. I mean, how can a horse that's beaten the other two be the bigger price, and he beat them on merit, not being endured on the wrong part of the track? I actually upgraded his run rather than downgraded it.
Yeah,
and yet it's bizarre, isn't it? How bookmakers can price up a horse who won, who was the best horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was I think it's only because he went into the race at 33 to 1 shot that people think, oh, he's not going to be able to do that again. But if you then go back and look at his Alcoaz run, where there was excuses for him that day, and he ran really well, despite being drawn 2 of 20, I think you could say that win was no fluke. So I've taken that view as well. So at the prices, yeah, I mean, I think Naval Crown's is seriously underestimated here.
Naval Crown is 6 to 1. It was interesting. James Doyle said after the race as well. He just said that the drop back and trip, he'd been running over 7 furlongs a mile for most of his career, but the drop back and trip was seemingly, what was the cause behind the improved form. Yeah. So yeah, exactly 6 to 1 there. Best price for Naval Crown. 30 to 2 best price with Hills and Coral currently to maintain that superiority amongst others in the field. And as I say, the last race on the card, the 5 o'clock, a 6-runner race here, Andy. We've got Udaberry, Adjuvant, Bizarre Law, King's Prince, Commonsensical, and Glen Savage all lining up. Any of these worth keeping an eye on?
Yeah, very much so, George. There's a lovely horse running in this called Bizarre Law. Andrew Balding trains him. He beat Nathaniel Green on his not his seasonal reappearance, on his second run so far this season. But he was up to trip to 1.5 miles. He had fast ground. He raced a little bit lazily that day, but I kind of like horses that do that. I don't like horses sometimes that come down the bridle and find nothing. I'd rather have horses that once they get into top gear and once they, hit maximum capacity, they keep running for you. And this is what this boy did. Clocked a very fast time, even though there was only 5 runners. The form, like I said, has already been franked by the second winning last week at Haydock. And I think a mark of 85 underestimates him going forward. I put him down as a horse that Andrew Balding will campaign for the Melrose. I think he won it last year, didn't he? I can't remember the name of the horse that won it. One of George Strawbridge's that won it. Won the Melrose for Andrew Balding. Yeah, if you could dig that out for me, that might stop me sort of floundering. But he's that kind of horse. I think mile 6 at York. He's just the kind of animal that this horse will end up being. And then I see him
Valley Forge.
Valley Forge, that's the one. Yeah, for the George Strawbridge team. And then I think he'll go to Newmarket and running that valuable 1.5 mile handicap that rounds off the season in, I think it's September, worth a few quid. I think Sascani won it last year, and Candleford I think was third in. So that's the kind of races I see this horse running in. He wants a real strong gallop, a proper test over either 1.5 miles or 1.6 miles, and he's already got the numbers to back it up. So he'd be my strong pick in the last race, even though we haven't got any prices.
Keep an eye out there for Bizarre Law in the final race of the July meeting at Newmarket, the one for Andy. But as we say, no prices as it stands. Thank you to Andy for his thoughts over all 3 shows. We'll look forward to chatting again next week. Do subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel where you can find all of these preview shows. You can find Racing Weekly there with Rishi Prasad and Sam Turner. You can find plenty of feature content there. We went and spent the day with Harry Eustace at Newmarket last week as well. So do check out the Oddschecker YouTube channel and subscribe there. And you can also find these podcasts on any podcast platform as well. Please do download the Oddschecker app for the best prices. Bookie offers free bets, each way terms, and the best tipsters in the game, including Andy himself. His tips straight to the Oddschecker app every single day of racing. Fingers crossed for a cracking week's racing at Newmarket. It all gets started in just under an hour, so we're going to go and get the kettle on and settle down in front of it. I hope you do too. And as is always the case with all of your gambling, whether you're following our tips or not, please ensure that you are always gambling responsibly. Thanks a lot and see you soon.